Welcome to my channel. The world is changing fast, faster than the headlines can keep up with, and increasingly, the explanations that were being given do not make sense. I am Manly, and I'm an author based in Australia. I've created this Multipolar Dispatch channel for one reason, which is to examine the world events from a perspective that is often missing from the mainstream media. Not a conspiracy theory, not ideological slogans, just a broader lens through which to understand what's happening to the world around us. Because what we are witnessing now is not an isolated series of crises. It's a systemic global transition. And when you connect the dots, the picture becomes remarkable. So for 500 years or so, global power has been largely organized around Western dominance, military power, financial power, control of trade, control of institutions, control of the narrative itself. But that era is being challenged now, economically, technologically, geopolitically, and much of the mainstream media still reports as if these developments are disconnected, rather than parts of a larger historical shift. This channel exists to connect those events together because understanding the pattern matters. So in this first episode, I want to connect 5 developments from the past few weeks, 5 stories that appear unrelated, but together they reveal something much bigger. The first story, I call it the military emperor has no clothes. America's defense establishment has just admitted something extraordinary, not to the public, but to the US Senate. The world's most powerful military openly admitted that it currently has no defense against hypersonic weapons or cruise missiles. Think about that for a moment. The superpower that spends more on defense than the next several countries combined together is admitting that it cannot reliably defend its own homeland. Now enter Trump's proposed Golden Dome missile shield. Sounds impressive, but according to the American Physical Society, the US has already spent $400 billion on missile defense since 1957 and still has no effective protection against realistic large-scale missile attacks. The proposed Golden Dome would reportedly require 40,000 space-based interceptors and could cost up to $3.6 trillion over the next 20 years. This is almost an unimaginable figure. Meanwhile, China is believed to possess 600 hypersonic weapons and Russia perhaps 200 to 300. And recent conflicts, especially involving Iran, reveal another uncomfortable reality. Missile defense systems eventually run out of interceptors. The attacker only needs enough missiles. The defender needs endless interception capacity. The maths becomes impossible very quickly. The military superpower of the modern world is now openly admitting that it cannot guarantee the defense of its own territory. That should change the way we think about global power. The next story is to do with the Philippines. So at the same time that all this is happening, the United States and Japan are now test firing missiles from the Philippines, from the territory of the Philippines. Tomahawk cruise missiles, Japanese anti-ship missiles, 17,000 troops from 8 countries, including Australia, participating in exercises. The message to China is obvious, but the message to the Philippines is perhaps less obvious. But this is the uncomfortable reality. The Philippines does not truly control these weapons on its own soil. If Washington decides these systems are needed elsewhere, they will be simply moved. And we already saw this happen in South Korea, when they moved the THAAD systems, which were originally deployed there despite public opposition, and they were just moved to the Middle East. So South Korea objected. What happened? Washington just ignored it. So the Philippines now faces a serious question. Is the country becoming a sovereign actor or simply a forward missile platform for somebody else's confrontation. Because if tension escalates with China, who absorbs the consequences? Washington or ordinary Filipinos? The third story that I want to share with you is to do with the current Asian economic nightmare, which has resulted from the war in Iran. While missiles dominate headlines, the damage is quietly spreading across Asia. Japan is struggling with stagflation. South Korea's currency has fallen to 17-year lows. The Philippines has declared an energy emergency after fuel prices surge. Indonesia and Vietnam have introduced forms of energy rationing. Thailand's fishing industry is reportedly shutting down because of fuel costs that have become unsustainable. And according to the World Bank, energy prices are expected to rise another 24% this year. But Asian economies pay additional premiums on top of that, meaning the real increase for many Asian countries may be closer to 30%. The IMF put it bluntly, the Iran conflict is now raising inflation, weakening external balances, and narrowing policy options across Asia. And here comes the cruel irony. These countries did not start this conflict. They did not design the sanctions architecture. They did not build the geopolitical choke points. Yet they are paying the economic price anyway. They are bystanders, absorbing the cost of strategies they never helped design. Now to the fourth story, what I term the petro yuan. Now to the next story, the petro yuan bombshell. Now we move into genuinely historic territory. Iran is now charging transit tolls through the Strait of Hormuz. Estimates suggest that this could generate $40 to $50 billion annually. But here's the important detail. These tolls are increasingly being paid for in Chinese yuan, not US dollars. At the same time, the UAE has exited OPEC. Iran is accepting certain forms of cryptocurrency for passage. And so for the first time since 1996, global central banks now reportedly hold more gold reserves than US Treasury debt. This is not a small symbolic shift. This is a structural signal, because the petrodollar system has been one of the foundations of American global power since the 1970s. Oil price in dollars, global trade recycled into US debt markets, American deficits financed by global demand for dollars. But now, the system is slowly being challenged, not through dramatic announcements, not through speeches, but quietly through practice. One yuan denominated transaction at a time. And every country that pays those transit fees in yuan is participating in a world where the US dollar is no longer the unquestioned default. Now to my final fifth story, the bottom line. And this brings us to the final point in this episode. An article by M.A. Hossein in the Asia Times made an observation that I think is historically important. He wrote, American primacy ended not because the United States became weak, but because the world changed faster than its strategic imagination. Because the United States still possess enormous strength, military reach, technology, finance, innovation. But strength without restraint can become self-defeating. And perhaps the deepest lesson of the Iran confrontation is that military capability and strategic wisdom are not the same thing. History shows that great powers which recognize their limits early adapt successfully. Those that deny reality usually learn the hard way. So in closing, what we are saying is that the world is changing, not in theory, not in think tanks, but in the daily realities of energy prices, in military deployments, in changing currency systems, and shifting centers of power. The purpose of the Multipolar Dispatch channel is to connect these dots. I'm Manly. If this perspective is useful to you, please subscribe, and I'll see you next week. Thank you.